Welcome to the November 15, 2013 Fish Eater Friday. We had a question come in just before I was recording last Friday, and because of the depth of the subject, I decided to put it off because my plan is for one answer per week, and I already had done two queued up. Here's the quote. Would like to hear a few minutes on baptism of desire and baptism of blood. This seems to be a contentious issue. We want the meat of the issue, not the fish. Yes, this is a contentious issue, one I have dealt with a lot. First really hit me in the late 1980s, from about 85 on to about 88, 89, when I was in correspondence with a lot of people. We're sorting things out, and the matter of baptism, blood, and desire kept coming up. In fact, it kept coming up so often that on my old Apple II Plus I was still using, I had a 5 1/4 inch floppy disk I'd slide in. I had a template of a letter written out with all my arguments on it, quoting from the various things I'd found to that point. And I would add, dear so-and-so, little opening, that, closing, addressing other things, yours in Christ the King, David Bodden, print and send. That's how often I dealt with it. So let's go first to where we read about it, right here in the Baltimore Number 4 Catechism, an explanation of the Baltimore Catechism of Christian Doctrine. This is a old copy. You got to watch the tan ones. I have reprinted this particular book among others. Tan has changed a couple things in theirs, so you got to watch theirs. So I go back to the old one, or to one I know I've got. How many kinds of baptism are there? There are 3 kinds of baptism. Baptism of water, of desire, and of blood. What is baptism of water? Baptism of water is that which is given by pouring water on the head of the person to be baptized, and saying at the same time, I baptize thee in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. What is baptism of desire? Baptism of desire is an ardent wish to receive baptism, to do all that God has ordained for our salvation. What is baptism of blood? Baptism of blood is the shedding of one's blood for the faith of Christ. And this is where people get off. And more recently, I have been working on this because I'm writing something really long in the matter of salvation, because I think this is a key point, and we'll see just a few of the points here in this video. Because I believe this whole matter stems from an overreaction to the equal and opposite heresy, which I'll get to in a moment. Okay, I have seen a history unfold, things I've found the last couple years. In the mid to late 1800s, the sermons of Bishop Jean-Baptiste Masson were translated into English and published. Several of these sermons dealt with the fewness of the elect. They're quite powerful sermons. If you can find them, they are on the internet. Look them up, read them. They might scare the hell out of you, and that's sometimes what we need, okay? Because they get us to thinking we've got to do more than we're doing. As a reply to these sermons, Nicholas Walsh wrote a book in 1898, The Comparative Number of the Saved and the Lost. The 17th proposition condemning the syllabus of errors is this: good hope at least is to be entertained of the eternal salvation of all those who are not in the true church of Christ. This is a summary of Walsh's book, which I have read cover to cover. He is holding out a good hope, not only the salvation of all Catholics, all Protestants, but all Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, everybody. He makes some convincing arguments, you might call them, quote, reasonable, from reason. But what I noticed when I went back and found my copy a while back and was looking at it, I said, I'm missing something very important here. I see no fathers of the church to speak of. I see no saints. I see no councils. by not seeing any of the meat. Okay, so this is the heresy which we're dealing with, is expanding the number of the saved beyond that which Pope Pius IX said. Good hope of the salvation of these people outside the church. Now notice, Pope Pius IX did not say no hope. He's written a couple of encyclicals on this, which we won't get into here, because we could be as long as my one answer last week, and I'm trying to avoid that. So I'd like to get to the meat of the question. Okay, Walsh's book should have been condemned. Outright, put on the index. No question. Unfortunately, it was not condemned, and this attitude took hold, especially in the United States, as did several other dangerous attitudes which prompted Pope Leo XIII to write his letter Testem Benevolentiae. I won't go into the other issues which is what Leo XIII addressed. He did not address this particular issue because I don't think he knew it was rising up. I think one reason why this expansion of salvation has gotten into people's heads and is because many of us have Protestant relatives. I do. My dad was a convert, okay? My grandparents died in Protestantism. I've now lost 2 uncles and an aunt in Protestantism. Let's see. No, I haven't lost any cousins on that side. But I think great-grandparents. Okay. Who wants to think Grandma and Grandpa could be burning in hell? It is a possibility. It's a possibility my Catholic relatives could be burning in hell. See, we have this softness in our heart and our heads. We want everyone to be saved. True, I want everyone to be saved. Absolutely. That's why we have to insist on teaching the doctrine clear and straight. Because if we teach lies, we try to make salvation easier than it is, and they don't measure up, we'll go to hell for teaching them wrong, and they'll go to hell for not measuring up. In fact, we have a better chance of going to hell for not preaching the truth, the whole truth. So, okay, we have this idea permeating the United States, and we get into the 40s and 50s, and that's when we come to Father Feeney, because this is called Feeneyism. Feeney overreacted to this lax opinion on salvation, and he restricted salvation only to those who are baptized with water. Absolutely no exceptions. If you're not baptized with water, you're going to hell. That's it. That's all. That is the proposition. And they cite extra ecclesiam nulla salus. Outside the Catholic Church, there is no salvation. Pius IX had addressed it. The Council of Trent had addressed it. Aquinas addresses it. Augustine addresses it. Many people address it. Okay? So, all right. There is the proposition. I believe it was the Holy Office wrote Feeney a letter explaining the Catholic position. You can find it on the internet, I'm sure. I've got it in my files. If it's not on the internet, let me know. I'll find it and post it. It's a good summary. It's similar to what the Baltimore Catechism says. And we got to remember something about catechisms. Catechisms are part of the ordinary magisterium of the church. All right? Being issued by the bishops for their countries, language, whatever. They are part of the ordinary teaching authority of the church. And in that respect, are somewhat considered infallible. Now, true, someone could put something into the Baltimore Catechism, and the only ones I would consider being part of the ordinary magisterium would be the Kincaid editions ordered by the Second Council of Baltimore. There have been revisions down from that, and without inspecting them, I could not make that claim on the newer editions that are out there. I'm not saying they're bad or anything, but I can't make that claim that they're part of the ordinary magisterium. But this is the basic teaching of the church, is there is baptism of water, blood, and desire. Okay? One might say calling it 3 baptisms is not a great way of putting it, but still it is there. Okay, so the Father Feeney thing, that's settled, everyone thinks. Now we come to Vatican II. And it took up the heresy of universal salvation in several decrees, even teaching that non-Catholic religion can be means of salvation, which they certainly are not. You cannot save your soul as a Hindu, as a Buddhist, as a Muslim, as an Orthodox, as a traditionalist. These are all non-Catholic sects. You cannot save your soul through them. I'm not saying that there isn't a Hindu or two in heaven, but they have not saved their souls through Hinduism. That's absolutely impossible. Pius IX goes into it very briefly. They must follow the natural law and thus not be in the state of mortal sin, violating the natural law. Okay, and he goes into a few other points. But absolutely for certain sure, we have to get the point straight. So what is the doctrine? Briefly, extra ecclesiam nulla salus. Outside the Catholic Church, there is no salvation. It's an absolute. Okay? All that are saved through the Catholic Church and through no other sect. As I named off a few. And some might say, you threw in the traditionalists. Well, the traditionalists are not Catholic. That'll be a subject of something else sometime. And it is subject of some of my other videos, writings, etc., proving this point. Because they do not accept the true Pope. That's an essential to being a Catholic. I'm not saying all traditionalists are going to hell, but they are not in the Catholic Church. Everyone is called to baptism by water. It's clear in the Gospels. Okay? If baptism of water is impossible, then they can be saved by their desire or their blood. Okay? So let's go to a couple of stories. We got the 40 martyrs of Sebaste. 40 people on a frozen lake, freezing to death with a hot water bath over here waiting for them. And a soldier's watching this, a pagan. He's one of the ones employed in the martyrdom. One of the 40 takes the hot water bath, apostatizes. The soldier gets up and joins them and is martyred with them. No baptism by water. But he gave his life for Christ. Okay, that's from the Roman Breviary. There are other instances in the Roman Breviary, other stories in history of people who have been martyred for the faith who are not baptized with water. Now we get to baptism of desire. The one I use, this is a fictional example. A man is on his way to his baptism, an adult convert. He's crossing a street, bam, gets hit by a truck. Are we now to say that he is damned for eternity because he didn't make it to the church and get baptized by water? No, I don't think so. True, things have been expanded way too far on both sides of the issue. Some would have everyone saved, others would have no one but the baptized saved. And I've noticed a couple of difficulties also in this. I'm thinking that those who restrict the number of the saved only to those who are baptized are getting into another proposition. I'm baptized, therefore I am saved. Which is absolutely false. There are baptized people in hell. There are special places reserved for us. If you're baptized, you will burn hotter than the Hindu, the Muslim, etc. Be assured of that. Go back to Massion's sermons, which could have possibly started this whole thing. Okay? Alright, we'll go to St. Thomas Aquinas. One point. He's discussing the matter of simony. We know simony is the buying and selling of holy things, especially the sacraments in this case. You're that man. You want to be baptized. You're stranded with the only possibility to be baptized is another man who says, for $100, I will baptize you. Would it be valid? Absolutely. It's a maniacal Sacraments are certainly valid because matter, form, and intention are there, can be there. Okay, we're presuming that's going to be there. What advice would you give that man who's being offered, I'll baptize you for $100, and this is only a chance of baptism? Should he pay the $100? Aquinas says no. He should rely on baptism of desire rather than participate in the sin of simony. I think I'll take Aquinas. Trent discusses it as well. There is baptism of water, blood, and desire. But let us not expand desire to the point that we're saving the whole world when that's not happening. The number of elect, that might be a debatable point on how few it is. Massillon is rather rough in his sermons. I think we need to hear some of these things because I think we can get lax. And here's the way I look at that particular thing. I'd rather be more strict and gain heaven than to relax a bit and realize I've fallen short and earned hell. Okay? Let us be more strict on ourselves. Okay? But let us judge doctrine by the truths of the faith, by the common and constant teaching of the church, which teaches there's baptism of water, there is baptism of blood in some cases, and there is baptism of desire in some cases. The church teaches us, I accept it. As I said in the vlog the other day, I have no opinions when the church has already settled it. I hope this is the meat of the question. And I hope I haven't gone on too long. May God bless you as you have fish for dinner on Fish Eater Friday.